The movie starts with a hitman named Michael who is celebrating at home with a friend of his named Cindy. The occasion is that he has just turned 50 and is finally retiring from his job with the criminal organization he works for. But what Michael doesn't know is that the organization has sent an assassination team to eliminate him. Then the team's sniper, named Facundo, appears. He's preparing his weapon and aiming it at Michael. Then he shoots Michael, hitting him in the shoulder. At the same time, the rest of the team, Hildy and Alex, enter and open fire on Michael. That's when we find out that Cindy is also a member of the assassination team. She had been pretending with Michael to distract him. But before Michael dies, he asks Hildy why they're doing this. She tells him that these are orders from Bolt, the gang leader, then shoots him one last time and finishes him off. After that, their teammate named Carl arrives, picks them up, and they leave the scene. At that moment, Hildy contacts Facundo to meet them at the organization's headquarters. Meanwhile, in another location, we see another hitman working for the same organization named Duncan, who is known as the Black Kaiser. Duncan is at the hospital undergoing a full medical checkup as he prepares to retire from his job in 2 weeks when he turns 50. After Duncan writes down all the injuries he has suffered from, he goes in to see the doctor for an examination. At that point, we see that Duncan's body is covered in scars. The doctor looks at the x-rays and notices a piece of metal inside Duncan's body. Then he asks him to raise his arm and feels around the area where the piece of metal is inside his body and tells him that he can remove that piece of metal from his body. But Duncan tells him that he will do that, but later. So the doctor asks him if he's taking the medication he prescribed for him. Duncan tells him that he's following the treatment and taking it on time. Then the doctor asks him what he's going to do after retirement. Duncan tells him that he's going to live his life like any normal person. After Duncan leaves the doctor, he goes to see his accountant. That's when we find out that Duncan's retirement bonus is $8 million. Duncan asks him to donate $200,000 like every year, and he emphasizes that the donation should go directly to the recipient just like every time, and from the same account he always donates from. Then the accountant tells him that he owns properties in 4 different states and asks which address to put on the retirement form. Duncan tells him to use his address in the state of Florida. After that, Duncan calls a woman from the organization named Vivian and asks her to meet him. After ending the call, he breaks the phone SIM card. When Duncan meets Vivian, he asks her about what happened to Michael. Vivian tells him that Michael is the 4th agent in the organization to die this month, and she hands him an envelope. She informs him that their sources say the person who killed Michael is connected to a gang from Russia, and that this gang hired a hitman named Pedro. When Duncan opens the envelope, he sees a photo of Pedro. Vivian tells him that Pedro is currently in Belarus. She tells him that Bolt, the head of the organization, assigned him the mission to kill Pedro in exchange for $1 million as a response to the gang that's been killing their clients. But Duncan refuses and tells Vivian that he's already retired. Vivian reminds him that he still has 2 weeks left before he turns 50, which means he's still obligated to follow the organization's orders. But Duncan ignores what she said, leaves her, and walks away. After that, he gets in his car and drives to the place where he lives, which is in the state of Montana. At night, he falls asleep in the chair in front of the TV, but he has a very disturbing dream. The dream includes scenes from a murder, and the next day, Duncan notices that his neighbor, Camilla, is trying to chop wood to keep warm, but she can't manage it. A little while later, Camilla goes out and comes back home, surprised to find that all the wood has been chopped. Duncan is watching her from his house without her noticing. At night, Duncan finds 15 emails from Vivian, so he calls her and learns that Bolt is insisting he be the one to carry out the mission. She tells him that Bolt has raised the price to $2 million. She informs him that $1 million will be deposited into his account before the mission and another $1 million after it's completed. So Duncan ends the call before it reaches 30 seconds, breaks the SIM card he was using, inserts a new one, and then calls Vivian again to refuse the mission for the 2nd time. But Vivian takes advantage of her friendship with Duncan and asks him to do this mission for her sake. So Duncan agrees and asks her to send the details via email, then ends the call before it reaches 30 seconds. He also breaks the SIM card so that no one can track him or find out his location. At that time, Vivian is sitting with Bolt in his mansion and they're not alone. Hilda, the head of the assassination team, is with them, and it turns out that she is Bolt's lover. At that moment, Hilda asks Vivian why she's nervous and afraid of Duncan. Duncan. Vivian tells her that Duncan is a dangerous and intelligent killer, and even the smallest mistake with him could cost all of them their lives. That's when we find out that Bolt is planning to betray Duncan and eliminate him, and that the assassination mission Vivian convinced Duncan to take on is actually a trap. And that's because Bolt wants to take the $8 million, which is Duncan's severance payout. At that point, we go back to Duncan, who's at home reviewing all the information Vivian sent him about the mission. Then we see Bolt sitting in his office with a group of investors from the organization. And we find out that Bolt owes the organization $29 million. So Bolt tells them that he will repay the amount within a year. They're surprised by what he says and want to know how he's going to do that. Bolt explains to them that many assassins will be reaching retirement age soon, and that there's a loophole in the organization's contracts with the hired assassins that he plans to exploit. And this loophole is a clause that states if a hired assassin dies before reaching retirement age, then he doesn't get anything and the bonus goes to the organization. So they ask him if he can guarantee the assassins will die before retirement age, and then he tells them that he's already started his plan and will eliminate all of them soon. So the investors agree with Bolt's plan, and after that, Duncan is on a plane heading to Belarus. When he falls asleep, he has a nightmare and wakes up startled. At night, Duncan disguises himself as a maintenance worker and goes to the hotel where Pedro, the target he's supposed to kill, is staying. And at that moment, Pedro is throwing a big party in his room, and then Duncan goes up to the floor where Pedro's room is and uses a drill that makes a very loud noise. So Pedro comes out of his room and yells at Duncan, but Duncan attacks him and pins him to the wall with nails. After that, he kills all of Pedro's men who are with him. And when he enters, Duncan enters Pedro's room and finds a file containing his photo and complete information about him. That's when he realizes that this whole mission was a trap set for him, so he goes back to Pedro and asks him who ordered the hit on him. Pedro replies, saying that he doesn't know, so Duncan threatens him that he'll kill him with the drill if he doesn't talk. But he becomes convinced that Pedro really doesn't know anything, so Duncan shoots him in the head and takes a photo of him. Then he calls Vivian and asks her to send him the $1 million as an advance for the mission. Vivian transfers the money to his account. So Duncan calls her again and tells her that he completed the mission and sends her a photo of Pedro after killing him. He asks her to transfer the $1 million, the second half, the rest of the mission payment. Vivian is shocked by what he says and doesn't respond. So Duncan tells her that he hopes she's not involved in the trap that was set for him. Otherwise, she knows exactly what will happen to her. He gives her a 24-hour deadline to transfer the rest of the money. After that, Vivian goes to Bolt, furious. She tells him that she warned him not to try to kill Duncan, but he didn't listen to her. As a result, Duncan uncovered their plan and killed Pedro. On top of that, he's demanding the rest of the mission payment, so Bolt tells her that he'll transfer the money to him, but he's going to assign the assassination team to take him out. And indeed, after that, we see Hildy and the assassination team at the accountant's office, beating and torturing him until he tells them where Duncan's file is, the one that contains all the information about his assets and bank accounts. After they get the file from him, they kill him. At that moment, Duncan is at the supermarket near his house. Camilla is there too. The shop owner tells Duncan that someone broke the wooden panel that belongs to Camilla, his neighbor, and she asks him if he saw who did it since he lives close by. Duncan replies that he didn't see anyone at all. Then we go back to the assassination team, who have received the addresses of the places owned by Duncan and are searching for him there. They head to his address in the state of Florida. Cindy knocks on the apartment door but finds someone else instead of Duncan, who opens the door for her, and the rest of the team follows in behind her. They beat the man and find out from him that he's just renting the apartment and doesn't know who the owner is. He says he deposits the rent money into a specific bank account. Once they're sure he really doesn't know Duncan's whereabouts, they kill him. Then the assassination team starts heading to the rest of the properties that Duncan owns. But each time they find out that these places are rented out, and they end up having to kill the tenants, so they don't leave any evidence behind. Meanwhile, Duncan runs into Camilla by chance at a cafe and they sit down and talk. She tells him that she loves the city they live in because it's a quiet place and the people who live there are very peaceful. When Camilla asks him about his job, he tells her that he works for a funeral company and lets her know that because of his job, he has traveled to more than 90 countries. He also speaks 8 languages, but now he's retired and has decided to spend the rest of his life in solitude and peace. Camilla is amazed by what he says and tells him that he should teach at the school so he can tell the children about the countries he visited interested and let them benefit from his experience. But Duncan refuses and explains to her that he doesn't know how to talk to children. However, Camilla manages to convince him. The idea and the next. The next day, Duncan goes to the school, stands in front of the children, and starts teaching them self-defense techniques, and he demonstrates his skills in using a knife. The children are amazed and excited, and they applaud him. When Duncan finishes, he hands them the knife so they can take a look at it. After that, he sits down in front of them to answer their questions. So they ask him, how do they bury bodies in India? At that moment, Duncan remembers the crime he committed there. He replies to the children and tells them that in India, people cremate the bodies. After Duncan finishes the lesson with the children, he goes out to Camilla and tells her what happened. He says the children were very happy when they saw the knife. Camilla replies to him saying that she doesn't like knives. At that time, Hildy and the assassination team are sitting and going through Duncan's file, and while they're searching, they find receipts for amounts of money he donated. They notice that all the receipts are from the same bank and that this bank is located in a small town in the state of Montana. So they deduce that Duncan is in that state. They decide to head there quickly to take him out. At that time, Duncan is buying a gun as a gift for Camilla and tells her that since she doesn't like knives, he wanted her to try a different kind of weapon. But Camilla tells him that she doesn't know how to use guns, so he tells her that he'll teach her. He actually takes her to the forest and starts teaching her, but he's surprised that Camilla, when she holds the gun, she gets nervous and suddenly breaks down, starts crying, and throws the gun from her hands. So Duncan approaches her, calms her down, takes her, and they go back to her house. There, Camilla tells him that someone caused her great harm when she was 13 years old, and since then, she has always wanted to see him in front of her and kill him so he would know that he caused her a new kind of pain. Duncan sympathizes with her and decides the next day to go buy her a gift. Meanwhile, Facundo and Carl are in the car parked in front of the bank watching it, and by coincidence, they see Duncan coming out of the store holding the gift in his hand, so they inform the rest of the team that they found Duncan. After that, Duncan is on his way home, and Cindy is standing on the road pretending that her car broke down. She tells Duncan that the mechanic won't be able to come until the next day and asks him if she can spend the night at his place. Duncan agrees and takes her to his house. At night, the rest of the assassination team continues with their plan. Facundo is on top of a tall building aiming a rifle, his sniper rifle, at Duncan, but Duncan notices the rifle's laser at the last moment and the shot hits Cindy in the shoulder. Duncan quickly moves and grabs his pistol. He starts firing randomly in all directions. Cindy tries to guide Facundo to Duncan's location as he moves around the house, but Duncan hits her in the head with a vase and finishes her off. After that, Hildy and Carl storm into Duncan's house, but they don't find any trace of him. Facundo tries to search for him using the rifle scope, but he's shocked when Duncan appears behind him and kills him. Then he takes the earpiece Facundo was wearing. He takes Facundo's place and aims the rifle at the house, then starts shooting at all the light sources inside the house. After that, he activates the thermal sensor and the rifle scope. He speaks to Hildy and tells her not to let fear take over because he's going to kill her calmly and quickly. So Hildy sends Carl to take him out. Meanwhile, she keeps talking to Duncan to distract him so he doesn't notice Carl. At that moment, when Carl comes out, he calls Alex and asks him to execute the backup plan. When Carl reaches Duncan, he shoots him multiple times, but he's shocked when he discovers that Duncan tricked him and appears from behind and shoots him in the leg. Then he asks him for the name of the person who sent him. When Carl refuses to answer, Duncan finishes him off. At that moment, Hildy is shocked when she finds out that Carl is dead too. She lights a flare too, so Duncan wouldn't see her and locate her position. But Duncan keeps waiting until the flare goes out. He manages to locate Hildy by the sound of her breathing. He shoots her twice in a row and finishes her off. After that, Duncan searches Carl's body and finds a key to the hotel room they were staying in the city, so he quickly heads there, but he doesn't find anyone except Alex's friend sitting on the floor. It's clear that she's drunk and not fully conscious. The girl thinks Duncan is Alex and asks him if he kidnapped the girl like Carl told her. So Duncan asks her about the kidnapped girl, and she tells him that Alex went to kidnap the girl he gave a gift to. So Duncan realizes that Alex went to kidnap Camilla, so he gets in his car and rushes to her house, but he finds the house trashed and empty. He goes back to the hotel angrily, but finds that the girl has disappeared, and there's no trace of her. At that moment, Bolt is furious because Duncan killed Hildy, his lover. Vivian calmly responds to him and tells him that she warned him. She told him not to mess with Duncan, but Bolt starts smashing everything around him and tells her that he's not going to show him any mercy and will make him wish for death every single day. Then we cut back to Duncan, who goes to visit an old friend named Porter and asks him to explain what's going on. Porter tells him that Bolt is planning to kill all the former assassins in order to collect a reward after their retirement. So Duncan asks him where Bolt might be hiding Camilla. Porter tells him that he's most likely keeping her at his mansion because it's huge and full of secret rooms. Duncan thanks him and says goodbye, but then he's surprised to find that Porter puts a cloth laced with sedative on his hand. When Duncan collapses to the ground and loses consciousness, he calls Bolt and tells him that the task has been completed. After that, Duncan wakes up and finds himself chained up inside a torture room. At that moment, Bolt tells Duncan that he has 4 days left before his 50th birthday. He tells him that he's going to make those 4 days a living hell for him, and on the day of his birthday, he will kill him. Then he shows him a picture of Camilla with him and tells him that he made her an addict. He also tells him that he's going to marry her instead of Hildy, whom he killed. Then Bolt begins to torture Duncan, cutting into his body with pliers. The next day, he repeats the same actions and causes him very severe injuries to his eyes. On the third day, he keeps stabbing him with a knife all over his body until a piece of the knife breaks off against a metal implant in Duncan's body. At night, he manages to remove that piece from his body and uses it to open the lock on the chains around his hands. When Bullet's men come in the next day, he takes them all out. At that moment, Bullet hears the screams of his men dying inside the room. On top of that, Duncan turns off all the lights in the place, which terrifies Bullet. He orders his men to go in and finish Duncan off, then leaves them to it. He runs up to his office, and as soon as the door to the room opens, Duncan attacks Bullet's men and takes them all out. After that, Duncan escapes from the place in a very bad condition. Because of his injuries, he keeps walking until he reaches a female friend of his. Her name is Jasmine. The first thing Duncan does is take Jasmine's phone and call Vivian, telling her that he wants to make a deal with her. He tells her that he will turn himself in exchange for them letting Camilla go. After that, Duncan loses consciousness due to his injuries. Jasmine takes him and starts treating him, and when he regains consciousness, he finds himself on the bed and his whole body is covered in bruises from the injuries. And when Duncan tries to stand on his feet, he collapses to the ground, so Jasmine comes over to help him back to the bed. She gives him a sedative injection and tells him that it will help him recover faster. And after a few days, Duncan regains his strength and is able to stand on his feet again. Jasmine takes him to a warehouse full of weapons. There, Duncan gathers many types of heavy weapons. After Duncan places all the weapons in the car, he says goodbye to her and leaves. While he's on his way, he calls Vivian and tells her that he's ready for the deal and lets her know that he'll call her again before ending the call. But the tracking devices that Bolt has show that Duncan is located somewhere near the mansion, so Vivian takes a large number of Bolt's men and they head out on their way to take out Duncan. At that moment, Duncan arrives at a warehouse in an abandoned area and starts preparing the weapons he has with him, placing them in specific spots. After that, he calls Vivian and informs her that the deal will take place the next day at 9 a.m. at the train station, and Duncan intentionally keeps the call going longer to lure them to his location, and indeed, Vivian and her men manage to pinpoint his location. When they arrive, they find him waiting for them. At that moment, Duncan tells Vivian that he's giving her a chance to walk away alive, but Vivian mocks him and doesn't believe what he's saying. At that very moment, Bullet's men start moving in on him, so Duncan uses the advanced glove he has to control all the weapons he had distributed around the area. He opens fire on all of Bullet's men and takes them out. Vivian gets hit by a bullet in her back and collapses to the ground. After that, Duncan pulls out his pistol and starts finishing them off. Anyone's still alive, but he refuses to kill Vivian and leaves her behind. At that moment, Bullet is sitting in his office watching everything happening through the security cameras. He gets scared and gathers all his men around him in the mansion, but when they see Duncan approaching through the window, they panic and run away, leaving Bullet alone. Then Duncan enters Bullet's office, decapitates him, and heads to the place where Camila is, picks her up and takes her back home. Duncan stays by her side until she recovers, but then he sees old newspapers in the house by chance, and in them is an article about a murder that happened long ago. And here we discover that the nightmare haunting Duncan in his dreams is the day he attacked an entire family and killed them all, except for their little daughter, whom he left alive, is still alive, and we find out that this girl is Camila, Duncan's neighbor. Duncan snaps out of his memories to find Camila pointing a gun at him, reminding him of what he did to her when he destroyed her life, and she asks him why he killed her family. Duncan confesses that it happened because someone gave him false information about the target's location. Camila starts crying and tells him that she found out years later that he had been donating a lot of money to her so she could continue her studies and live a good life. At that moment, Duncan is moved and tells her that he regrets it and asks her to shoot him and take her revenge. Camila does shoot at him, but she misses on purpose because she wants to know who ordered him to kill her father. So he says. Duncan tells her that he doesn't know who that person is, but he promises her that he will search for him until he finds him, and the movie ends.